Well, good morning, everyone. And welcome to the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber's Healthcare and Healthy Workforce Breakfast. My name is Joe Bauman. I'm president of the Chamber. On behalf of our board of directors and our ambassadors and our team, thanks for coming to the third and final Forecast Breakfast series of 2023. We're excited to finish the series, and we hope everybody has enjoyed and more importantly, got a lot of great information from it. Before I do some introductions and thank yous, just a couple of quick questions for the group. First question, who here this morning is attending their very first chamber event? Welcome. That's awesome. Similarly, who among us this morning has had the perseverance to attend all three Forecast Breakfast events? Awesome. So, I have a special thanks for all of you. Anyone who just raised their hand, if you give Cheryl, who's in the back, your business card at some point this morning, we are going to invite you to attend as our guests the Chamber's After Hours Mixer on April 13th at Citizens State Bank. It's going to be a great night. There's going to be lots of food. There's going to be complimentary adult beverages, great networking opportunities. So just a little thank you from us to you for supporting our forecast series. And again, if you just give Cheryl your business card, we will get you registered for the event. So thank you very much. Speaking of Cheryl, I do want to introduce the Chamber staff. Cheryl in the back is our operations manager. She helped you this morning with registration. Kelly Bennett is our events and marketing manager. I think she's standing next to Cheryl. She put on this morning's event and did all the planning. Thank you. And Rachel DeVries is our membership engagement manager. Thank you, Rachel. And last but not least is our super duper extraordinaire, we call him our staff photographer, even though he's a very loyal volunteer, Doug Ashley, who took your picture this morning. Thank you, Doug. So if you are not real familiar with the Chamber, we are a staff of 4, who I just introduced, plus Doug. And we serve about 630 member businesses. So roughly, we have about 150 members each to support. So that can be a strenuous task, but we couldn't do everything that we do without the dedication and support and loyalty of our volunteers. And our volunteers are led first by our board of directors, who give their time, talent, and treasure to support the Chamber as part of their company's missions. And then our ambassadors, who are really the Chamber foot soldiers who help us in so many ways, visiting members, onboarding new members, supporting events, handling ticket sales at events that we have that, and we couldn't do what we do without them. So if you are a member of the board of directors or the ambassador group, please stand and be recognized. And lastly, I want to acknowledge and thank our sponsors for this evening's program and for the entire forecast series. We could not put on events like this without the financial support of our sponsors, who help keep the costs down for all of the events that we do, including some events that are either at low cost or no cost for our members. Our sponsor this morning, first off, is our host sponsor, which is Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, and you'll be hearing from their president, Shana Johnson, in just a bit. Our diamond sponsor is Clark Hill PLC. Our platinum sponsor is the Bank of Ann Arbor. And our gold sponsors include Fenner, Mellstrom, and Dooling PLC, Citizens State Bank, which I just mentioned, which is hosting next week's Business After Hours, and Wellness Works. So thank you very much to all of our sponsors this morning. And then lastly, I want to also recognize our legacy sponsors for 2023. These are a smaller group of Chamber member businesses that pledge a financial commitment at the beginning of each year to help defray the costs of many of the programs that we do. Again, many of them that are low cost or no cost, our Business After Hours, our Chamber 411s, our Professional Edge, Professional Development Series, all of those things we're able to do at low cost or no cost because of the financial support that we receive from our legacy sponsors. This year, they include Clark Hill, the Bank of Ann Arbor, Citizens State Bank, Fenner, Mellstrom, and Dooling, Michigan United Credit Union, North America Midway Entertainment, SAIC, and Corewell Health. So please join me in thanking all of our legacy sponsors. Okay, now it's time to introduce our moderator for this morning's program. Our moderator is David Hansma, who is a member at the law firm of Clark Hill. David guides clients through complex disputes, including bet the company litigation. And I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it sounds a little scary. So maybe he'll explain it. I'm not sure. David represents plaintiffs and defendants in corporate and fiduciary duty litigation in the areas of shareholder oppression. Again, kind of a scary word, but I'm sure we'll learn about that as well. Partnership disputes and probate disputes. His experience includes representation of clients on a variety of other commercial issues, including class action defense, contract disputes, employment issues, real estate matters, non-competition disputes, and fraud claims. David also has an active healthcare litigation practice. He represents doctors and medical groups before courts and administrative tribunals on issues such as disciplinary complaints, Medicare appeals, and False Claims Act defense. Please join me in welcoming David to the podium.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you to the Chamber for having me. It's my pleasure to, is this thing still on?
Yes.
Okay.
So sorry.
It's my pleasure to moderate this event. I'm glad to be here with some of my Clark Hill colleagues as well. Bet the company litigation is just kind of a lawyer phrase for very high stakes litigation where the entire company is at stake. And if you lose your business. So we represent clients in very complicated commercial litigation. And so that's really what that's referring to. Shareholder oppression is also a scary phrase, but it's a form of commercial litigation dealing with shareholder rights in closely held companies. So happy to explain any of that later on. But for now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Shana Johnson, president of Henry Ford West Bloomfield. Shana leads the 191-bed acute care medical campus in the Metro Detroit suburban area. Her focus is on creating a high-quality, safe environment while emphasizing patient, employee, and physician engagement. Shana is a seasoned executive leader with more than 15 years of experience within complex organizations, including national integrated health systems, community, and large academic organizations. She has held many hospital leadership roles. Most recently, she served as Chief Operating Officer at Ascension St. John, Detroit, and River District Hospital in St. Clair County. Previously, she was at Trinity Health, where she successfully launched Trinity's Hospital at Home program in 2 markets. Shana earned both a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and a Master of Health Services Administration degree from the University of Michigan. She holds numerous certifications in community leadership roles. Most notably, she is a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives and serves on the ACHE Management Series editorial board. She is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Leadership Oakland 33, and a board member of the Ronald McDonald House of Detroit, Farmington YMCA, and Alternatives for Girls. Thank you, Shana.
It is so hard to hear things about yourself. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Chamber for the invite and the privilege to talk to you about healthcare and where we're going, where are we, and hopefully not share a doom and gloom story as all of you sit here as consumers of this wonderful industry that I have the privilege to lead in. So I hope to give you some insights into where we are, a little bit about where we've been, but hopefully inspire the future. So this is a very complex industry that we all participate in. So I am trying to simplify where we are for you through 3 lenses. So I'll talk a little bit about healthcare economics, consumers, and the workforce. And hopefully through each of these categories, you will have an appreciation for the future. So I'll start with the headlines. So how many of you choose to opt out of media? And then how many of you are media junkies? You read every headline, you subscribe to every newspaper. Okay, a little bit of both. But the headlines are glaring, and you've seen the regional area has suffered quite a bit as a result of the pandemic, but arguably healthcare is a pretty volatile industry. The organizations that you see listed here have reported significant operating losses. I think one of the most challenging as of late is to see hospitals and healthcare systems eliminate services. So I won't call out competitors necessarily, but nationwide, organizations are exiting services that have historically been loss leaders. Many of us are in the pediatric service area. We offer labor and delivery services, and quite frankly, those are not revenue generating services. We usually rely on those that generate revenue to offset those costs. So just a little bit of background as to why some healthcare organizations are making these decisions to shut down these services. I hate to say it, but a lot of it is driven by the cost. So I'll talk a little bit more about cost and what's driving the cost up in just a few minutes. But we are working to find ways to get creative to generate income to cover these costs. And by and large, our reimbursement environment shapes our ability to partake in certain services. The pandemic truly expedited the need to shift care out of the walls of the hospital into the ambulatory setting. This work really started maybe as early as 2015 when you heard a lot about population health management. We were focused on healthy communities, how to transition care into the ambulatory setting, how to manage health and wellness so that consumers need not enter into the hospital ecosystem, if you will. So think primary care visits, preventive maintenance visits. All of those are ways in which we seek to manage the cost curve and to maintain healthy populations. Hospitals are cost centers. I mean, it's incredibly expensive, and I'll talk a little bit more about the demographic of who consumes and why the costs are increasing, but a lot of it is driven by the age of our patients. So on average in my facility, patients are, I would say, between 70 and 80 years old on average. So chronic illness and this need to be heavy on the resource consumption is part of our challenge. So there's a lot on this slide. So I'll try to talk through a few key highlights. So this is really the healthcare economics part of the presentation. So the economics of healthcare will increasingly focus on high value, low cost, and decentralized care. I'll tell you a little alarming statistic that I learned in preparation for this presentation. Michigan is the 14th largest, the 14th oldest state. How does that make you feel? The 14th oldest state. So what does that mean? Lots of things. So 50% increase in Medicare beneficiaries are expected. Seniors that are cared for in hospitals and nursing homes. Again, we have a very large ecosystem where patients consume health care, but by and large, the senior population are largely in hospitals and our nursing home settings. So we have to find ways to get better at delivering service in the best location where patients have better outcomes. And I'll talk to you about home. It was mentioned that I launched a hospital at home program, and I will tell you, if the pandemic did anything, it expedited our ability to provide care in places where we need it most, and that's in the home. And it's unfortunate, but we will see significant changes in arguably the months to come with the lifting of the Emergency Act. With the act, we were afforded special waivers that allowed us to stand up new programs like telemedicine to treat patients in their homes who would otherwise be treated inside of the walls of the hospital. Patient care outcomes are better for certain populations when they receive care outside of the walls of the hospital. Acute mental status change is one of the consequences for seniors when they're admitted into an inpatient environment. So when you have a senior with a chronic condition and they meet certain qualifications, there are programs where you can afford those seniors to receive the care that they need in their home, but the payment structures aren't yet developed to support that. So over the years, hospitals have always struggled with operating margins. You'll see here that most hospitals had a 0.2% operating margin with the rise in cost. So how do we cover ourselves with a 0.2% operating margin? So what's driving this lack of profitability arguably is labor. So with the pandemic, we saw a mass exodus of clinicians from the healthcare workforce. And then the bidding war started, right? So competitor hospital A, I'll just say on this side of town, is offering a $15,000 sign-on bonus for nursing. Competitor B on the other side of town is offering a $50,000 sign-on bonus for nursing. And oh, by the way, there's a contract agency that's offering exponentially more above that. So during the pandemic, we saw healthcare struggle across the continuum. And many clinicians, while well-intended, took the opportunity to increase their income in very short time spans, right? If nothing else, we learned that life is short. And so many nurses and other clinicians opted to go on the road. They moved about within the country, they moved about within the local areas, and took advantage of these high base salaries. And so it created this push and pull within the organization. So many systems like ourselves were forced to close down units. Length of stay for patients was longer because the post-acute care environment was compromised. So if you had a patient needing to go to a nursing home, well, guess what? A lot of the technicians and the nurses, they left the nursing home to go on the road. And so the wait times to get a bed in a nursing home increased. Patients stayed in the hospital longer than they needed to. And so when you're in the hospital, the longer you stay, the higher the risk, right? So if you're in the hospital and you're a senior, you're not in your comfortable environment, you're not with your pets, right? Depression, acute mental status change, all of these negative consequences. And so then it spirals into consumption of resources. Now we have consults for different services now needing to provide care to a patient, and it seems like there's no way out. So again, I'm trying not to present a doom and gloom story, but I really want everyone to appreciate the complexity of the system. And when we talk about why does healthcare cost so much, why is it such a large percentage of the GDP, it's all of these scenarios coming together to create this perfect storm. So what do we do? How do we get out of it? One of the things I didn't mention was during the pandemic, a lot of people opted out of care altogether. There was a lot of fear. And so some people chose to delay care. Some people chose not to enter into the healthcare ecosystem altogether. And so what did that do? That increased the complexity of the patients when they finally presented to the hospital. So you'll see on the headlines, 42% increase in hospital expenses per admission. So now what's happening is patients are sicker when they come to us. And so again, the whole story ensues. What does that mean? It means resource consumption increases, the level of intensity from the clinical staff increases. So if a patient is now in the ICU for something that maybe they would have otherwise been on a regular medical surgical unit, now the nurse to patient ratios are tighter. So again, the cost is incrementally increasing with the aging population, but certainly some of these other factors are expediting our challenges. So volume is migrating out of the hospital. I talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. So what are we expecting to see? We're expecting to see a smaller number of patients coming to the hospital to be admitted, and we call them admissions or discharges, but again with increased acuity. So what does it take for hospitals to manage these patients? It takes a higher level of competency of your nurses. I'm going to go out on a limb and project out, 20 years from now, we might see hospitals with more ICUs than we have today, right? In a hospital before the pandemic, I'll say about a 500-bed hospital, maybe 16, 20 ICUs. That number increased exponentially during the pandemic because we had so many sick people in the hospital. We had to create an ICU environment to take care of them. That's our future. That's our future. Increased volume transitioning into ambulatory surgery centers. So if you think about hip replacement surgery, dare I say, how many in the room have either had one or know someone that had a hip replaced? Greater than 10 years ago, keep your hand up. How many days did you stay in the hospital, do you remember, or did your loved one stay in the hospital?
At least 7.
At least 7. Who's had one in the last 3 years, 2 years?
Somebody had one Tuesday in the morning, and they were at their house at 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
So we have found ways through technology and arguably through the pressure of the reimbursement environment to take care of patients in new settings at lower cost. So the days of having a hip replaced and sitting in a hospital for a week are long gone. I hear stories, I won't tell you how old I am, but I'll tell you that I hear stories about delivering a baby and being in the hospital for 2 weeks, and you could smoke in a hospital too, by the way. That no longer exists. We have figured out how to do things better, faster, with quality outcomes. And so that expediting of moving into the ambulatory setting is in part the pandemic, but largely driven by the reimbursement environment. Insurers are saying, hey, why are we paying this much money? Ambulatory surgical centers are efficient. We get good quality outcomes. And so now we're going to disincent if you perform certain surgeries on a level patient that doesn't require higher acuity care. Now you're at risk financially if you do these procedures in the wrong setting. And so what does that mean for healthcare systems? Most healthcare systems' revenue today comes from the hospital inpatient care. Think national healthcare systems that have care across the continuum. They own and operate hospitals, clinics, ambulatory surgery centers, post-acute care skilled nursing facilities. The lion's share of their income still comes from hospitals today. So when you see this shift into the ambulatory setting, our historical revenue generating entity is now suffering to some extent, and that's by and large driven by the reimbursement environment. But the shift is good. I'd rather be at home within the same day of my hip surgery than I would be in the hospital for an entire week. So we are needing to become increasingly customer focused and patient centric. Declining emergency room visits with the rise in urgent care and same day clinics. How many of you have noticed the pop-up of urgent care facilities on every corner? Yes. That's by design. There are more appropriate settings for care. And again, think higher acuity patients in the hospital, they typically start at the emergency room. That's the front door to hospitals. And so what has happened is that we are starting to stand up more appropriate care settings so that those that need the higher level treatment can receive it in a more expeditious fashion. Because if we all poured into the emergency department at the same time with varying levels of acuity, right? We have a triaging system, you all have witnessed it perhaps, and we try to select quickly those that need to be expedited and those that we can assess, and then maybe they wait a little bit longer. Well, when the entire department is filled with very sick people, and you walk in with a bee sting or maybe, a runny nose or a cough that just won't go away, and you can't get into your doctor's office because it's a Saturday afternoon, you're gonna wait. You're gonna wait. And so urgent cares help to offload some of that congestion that happens in the emergency department. Same-day clinics are, and so I didn't even talk about the cost, but same-day clinics are a great low-cost option if your health system offers it. You pay your same office copay, which is less than what you would pay if you go to an urgent care center. So those are strategic business models that allow us to bend this cost curve back in the favorable direction. I talked a little bit about the Public Health Emergency Act and how it enabled temporary payment structures that allowed us to be more nimble and patient-focused. So think telemedicine. Many of our our primary care offices were closed during the pandemic. They shut down completely. Prior to the pandemic, there was not a payment structure to support telemedicine visits with, I'll say, the large population of payers that are out there. Some healthcare systems on the West Coast have always had e-visits, but it wasn't a popular business model. We stood that model up in a matter of weeks. And I'm sad to say, as we have exited out of the intense portion or intense time frame from the pandemic, people are not choosing virtual visits any longer, which is quite surprising. Those numbers are dropping back down, and that's unfortunate because I do believe that that is the future, that we should expect to see increased use for telemedicine. I will tell you, in our health system, we are standing up a virtual ICU. Others have done the same. So I think what I would say about that is we benefited from the pandemic as much as we suffered. Increased use of technology, meeting patients where they are just some of the ways in which I think we have successfully proven models that we hope to see live on into the future. I'll mention one last thing on this slide, and that's the care models in the home. I talked about hospital at home as a substitute for inpatient care. There are skilled nursing facility at home models as well. We actually have them in Henry Ford Health System in one of our markets. Expect to see more of that. And that was really born out of, during the pandemic, you couldn't visit your loved one in the skilled nursing facilities. And God forbid you couldn't get into one because they didn't have any beds available because the staffing has been so compromised. So again, increasing our options by delivering care in the home is another way to keep the costs down and to offer a better consumer or patient experience. So I put this slide up just to confuse you a little bit. It's one of those slides that I hate but I love because it really depicts the entire healthcare ecosystem, if you will. This comes from SG2, which is one of our think tanks. We use it for research, and it keeps us ahead of the curve from a healthcare planning perspective. But this really illustrates the accelerated shift from care settings that have been considered traditional, which is your AMC, your academic medical centers. So think the larger institutions that do the really complex stuff, open heart, transplant. So our main campus downtown, the campus in Ann Arbor, the campus in Royal Oak, places like that are considered academic medical centers. So our hospital falls into the community hospital setting, but I'll tell you this. Most of the community hospitals that have historically provided care on this continuum that would arguably be acute and not as high acuity care, during the pandemic, we had to quickly evolve and figure out how to deliver higher levels of care in our settings. So where we would historically transfer patients from the community hospitals into our main campus hospital because the patients are sicker, we weren't able to do that during the pandemic, either because of staffing ratios or because, patient preference, whatever the case. We expedited the training of our staff. We leveraged the technology, and now if you have neurosciences needs, certain brain surgeries, the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital delivers the same level of care for neurosciences as is delivered at our main campus downtown. So what you will start to see is community hospitals having the ability to offer what is considered tertiary care. Your academic medical centers will most always be your quaternary care level, so the highest level of care locations. And so then, again, sicker in the hospital, those that have the ability to be treated in ambulatory centers, they will go there. Patients treated in their home, urgent care, you've heard the story. This is another eyesore for you, but I want to give you just a quick depiction of the ED and urgent care reality of this market area. This is essentially our service area, but you can see how many centers are stood up in this community. The need is there. The need is there, and we as a healthcare system are being very strategic in where we place centers so that we can meet communities where they are. I'll leave that there for a second. Everyone's bedazzled by all the icons. So next up, consumers. How am I doing on time? Wrap it up? All right. So consumers, got it. So I'll talk to you a little bit about consumers, just some more statistics. There is, in Michigan, predicted to be a 23-year life expectancy variance across Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne counties. So what does that mean? There are significant disparities that we know exist that equate to a 23-year variance in life expectancy. So we have to get better as a healthcare delivery system at customizing our treatment plans for populations. We saw the skew in the number of, I will say, minority individuals that died during the COVID pandemic. Chronic illness is real. It's a huge opportunity for us to become more precise in how we deliver care to populations of patients. We do a community health needs assessment every 3 years as a healthcare organization. So that means we survey our communities and we can quickly identify where the greatest needs are. And then we put plans together to develop programming and clinical programs to address those needs. Patients are demanding it. They want personalized experience. You can see 75% of patients share that they want their care to be more precise. Make it meaningful for me. So we have within our organization the ability to offer gene therapy. Most recently, we made available to our employees, our HAP members, the ability to do genetic testing for certain cancers so that the physicians can create a treatment plan that is precise to your type of cancer given your genealogy. So this is tremendous. This is the future, and people are asking for it and demanding it. One last thing I'll mention, convenience. How many of you struggle with getting into your primary care physician office? How many have the ability to schedule your primary care visit online as you would a restaurant open table? Less hands. That's where we're going. That's where we need to go. Last topic, I'll talk about workforce. The workforce has been tremendously compromised. A lot of nurses, a lot of physicians, and quite frankly, other technical roles that we never talked about exited healthcare. We have shortages in medical laboratory scientists. Who knew they existed? They work in the lab, they're in the basement, they're necessary. You can't run a hospital without them. We have shortages in biotechnologists, those that make sure that our machines work, that they're well calibrated. We have shortages in phlebotomists, pharmacy technicians, radiology technicians. Every discipline in healthcare is currently running short, and it's not only because people exited the industry, right? It is also because some exited the market and they moved into other states. So what are we doing to combat this challenge? And I'll focus on that versus the doom and gloom. I think the promise is that we've figured out that we have to get to the foundational level of education. In K through 12, while there are some career conversations, there aren't enough. So healthcare systems are reaching out to high schools. We, within our organization, work in very close partnership with the West Bloomfield schools. We've trained their we've trained their teachers, their educators on Stop the Bleed. We have a medical school partnership, so we have students that come on campus every single week and spend time with clinicians to learn about the industry, and we are seeking to increase those partnerships with other school districts. We have Grow Your Own programs where we've identified talent in the organization, perhaps in non-clinical roles that may have an aspiration to become a nurse, a technician, a doctor one day. And then we are working very strategically to crosswalk our tuition reimbursement realities to the cost of achieving either those clinical credentials or some sort of certification that would allow for them to have a meaningful career in healthcare. Really excited about this. I can't say the partnership, but you will hear about a partnership coming up in the near future where I have hope that we can start to build that bridge for the community members that have an interest in this field and just need a little bit of guidance and, quite frankly, support to bridge over. We are training our leaders in this industry. You have to be nimble and willing to take risks and do different things than what we've done before in order to keep our organization solvent and sustainable. So I'll leave you with the last few thoughts about positioning for the future. Investing in our team members and our facilities. We've been challenged with capital investments over the last 3 years as a result of our high labor costs during the pandemic, but it is absolutely critical that we invest in our infrastructure in order to build the healthcare industry of the future. So you heard the headlines about Henry Ford's planned partnerships with Michigan State University and the Pistons. We believe that it is critical to support local economic development. And so, yes, we will invest in real estate, we'll invest in cities and residential areas so that we can offer the community members an opportunity to work. That certainly generates a significant income stream for healthcare systems that allow us to continue to take care of the patients and the populations that we serve. So I know that I went over. I could talk about this all day. I will stop now, and are we going to do questions later?
Yeah, well, yes.
Questions later. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Shana. That was excellent. It's wonderful to hear somebody who's passionate about what she does in her industry. Our next speaker is Cynthiana Lucian. Cynthiana serves as Director, Healthcare Initiatives for the Detroit Regional Chamber. In this role, she directs strategies to encourage healthier workplace and communities through various initiatives and partnerships. Cynthiana works closely with healthcare experts and business leaders to align efforts around community health and employee well-being. Prior to leading the healthcare and wellness initiatives at the Chamber, Cynthiana led community engagement efforts in the nonprofit sector, advocating for mental health, disability inclusion, and underserved children and families. Cynthiana currently serves on a variety of community-based projects, including the Southeast Michigan Alliance for Addiction-Free Communities, Tech Town's Med Health Executive Board, and the Michigan Wellness Council Advisory Board, with the goal to improve healthcare outcomes in the Detroit region. Cynthiana, thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and it's so nice to be here with you all, and I'm glad that the weather cooperated. The storms are holding off, so that's good. Thank you to the Birmingham Bloomfield Chamber for having me, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to kind of get a feel for the room. So raise the hands. How many have experienced repeated stress in the last few months? This could be in your jobs, in your personal lives. Okay, so I'm seeing a theme here, right? Most of us have our hands raised. So this has been the theme for the last few years through the pandemic. So today we're going to be talking about the forecast of workforce wellness. But first, I would like to touch on the impacts from COVID-19 on the workforce. So I'm going to be sharing some stats with you, some research, just to really, paint the picture for you and put things in perspective. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. So, COVID-19 impact on employee well-being. What we've seen is increased mental health challenges, which include depression, anxiety, substance use disorder. And I don't think this is, a surprise to any of us due to the pandemic, the world events, our economic situation. A significant amount of the population has dealt and is still dealing with these mental health challenges. So I know you see the stats here, but I'm just going to read them to you just to really portray their significance. So 20% of the US adults were experiencing a mental illness in 2022, and this is equivalent to 50 million Americans. Pretty significant number. Recent stat here, 32.3% of US adults reported symptoms of anxiety and or depressive disorder in 2023. And 90% of us, of Americans, believe the US is facing a mental health crisis. And I think we can all agree that, this is very real and it's something that we need to work towards. And because many employees don't feel comfortable disclosing their personal issues with their leaders and HR, a good amount of employers might not, see this as a problem within their organization. But the truth is, this is a very prevalent problem within our workplaces, and it's something that we need to address and, really communicate with our workforce and pinpoint those challenges. So this is just a chart that's significant, that, portrays the number that I shared. And as you can see, right now we're at 32.3% of adults, reporting these symptoms. The highest was in February 2021 at almost 40%, which is very significant. We dipped down a little bit in 2022, or actually we dipped down about 10%, and now we're a little bit higher than we were last year. So as you can tell, the world events, the pandemic, post-pandemic, people are still, fearing the uncertainty, and we're seeing a rise in these cases again. So now to talk about stress and burnout in the workplace. This is something that we've all experienced, I think, in our workplaces. It's been a huge concern for employers. Many recognize it, but don't really know how to pinpoint it, how to address it, what to do about it. And this has been such a critical issue that the World Health Organization has classified it as a medical diagnosis. And they're saying it's a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. So really, what we're seeing is this prevalence of stress and burnout in the workplace. It's really affecting us globally, but especially in the US, where we see 43% of middle managers reporting this burnout. But also looking at the C-suite, 70% are considering quitting to search for a job that responds to their mental health and well-being. And I think we've seen this regionally with some of our C-suite leaders, shifting around and changing industries and, that sort of thing. So this is a really big challenge that we're facing, and it's something that we need to address going forward. And it's interesting because Deloitte actually did a recent study on workplace burnout to really, pinpoint what percentage of the respondents are, dealing with stress and burnout. And they did find that 77% of the respondents said that they were, experiencing this. But what's more interesting is that 70% said that they don't think their employers are doing enough to prevent or reduce burnout. So as we can see, this is an opportunity in your organizations to really, tackle this issue. So moving forward, I think this was brought up in the previous presentation as well, but because of the turbulence and the challenges we've experienced, focus on preventative care has really been low on our list throughout the pandemic. And here, you could see that 6 in 10 Americans live with at least one chronic condition, such as heart disease, stroke, cancer, or diabetes. To point out that obesity is considered a chronic disease as well. Sometimes it's not listed in the bunch, but that's something that we're seeing as well. And really, lack of chronic disease management leads to poor well-being, low productivity, absenteeism, and increased healthcare costs for business. So really, it's costing all of our business money to take care of our employees. I think it's really our duty to encourage our employees, our peers, our loved ones to get back on track with managing their health and well-being. So whether, it's going to your routine appointment or, getting your routine vaccinations or, just really managing your chronic disease or preventing, a potential chronic disease. So those are really our responsibilities as business leaders and healthcare leaders in our community to do those things. So, I don't think this is a surprise to any of us. The labor shortage has been top of mind for, our region, our nation. It's been in the headlines. But I did want to bring some recent statistics and some recent research because it's all linked together. So what we're seeing is, 4 million Americans, 2.6% of the workforce quit their jobs in October 2022. This is 6 months ago. So workers are not just quitting their jobs, but they're quitting industries. And I know, this was mentioned in the previous presentation, especially in the healthcare field, we're seeing a huge shortage of healthcare workers, as well as other industries as well. So, this is a significant problem. It's critical for us to address it. We're seeing, people shifting, leaving careers altogether, getting out of the workforce, and it's really affecting our businesses. So, 40% of U.S. workers say that they may leave their jobs in the near future. So, thinking of your workforce population, almost half is thinking about either looking for a new job or leaving altogether. So that's pretty significant when we're thinking about the future and planning for the future. Retaining and attracting talent continues to be a significant challenge for business. So, this is something that I think we're all looking at. We're trying to find solutions to these challenges that we're facing in our own industries. So without a doubt, there is a link between the high resignation rates and health and well-being challenges of the workforce population. So this is why we're having this conversation, why it's so important to invest in our employees and in our team members. Okay. So does anyone know what this number stands for? 81,396 hours. If you do, shout it out. Or I can pick on you. Even if you're wrong, it's okay.
That's how many hours Jason billed last year.
So, no. This is the amount of time an average person spends at work in their lifetime or working. 81,396 hours. So let me repeat that. The average person spends 81,396 hours working in their lifetime. So this is the second highest to the amount of time that we spend sleeping. So as you can tell, this is a very big number. And I think now we understand and, why our employees and even us ourselves, we expect more from our workplace. And we want to, have that supportive, inclusive employer that is, really supports our health and well-being goals. And it's interesting because I had a conversation, a while ago, and someone asked me, a person in leadership asked me if, this workplace well-being focus is a trend, like meaning, is it going to go away soon? Is this temporary? And the answer is obviously no. And this is why, right? Because employees now more than ever recognize the importance of taking care of themselves, and they expect their employers to do the same. So, fun number to share with all of you. Okay, so now we're going to get into the section on why focus on workforce well-being. Well, we've talked about this, retain and attract top talent. Obviously that is one main area that will improve if we focus on the health and wellness of our employees. Increase productivity, engagement, and overall satisfaction with the work environment. And, not only do we have healthy, happy employees if we do this, but we also improve our bottom line, right? And decrease absenteeism and quiet quitting. Quiet quitting is fairly a new term. Can someone tell me what quiet quitting means? Go ahead.
You just don't show up the next day.
Not quite.
You show up to work even you're not
Yes.
enthusiastic.
Close. So basically, you're not outright quitting your job. You're still an employee. You're still working for the company, but you're just quitting the idea of going above and beyond. So really, you're coasting, right? You're kind of there, but you're not motivated to, bring new ideas. You're not passionate about your job anymore, and
Netflix while you're on your computer.
yes, distractions, like really just not being engaged in your day-to-day work, right? So, we're seeing a lot of this going on because people are, affected by all of these health and well-being factors, and, they're just kind of there without being productive. And if we focus on workforce well-being, we could really motivate some of these quiet quitters to really, re-engage and be satisfied and re-energized to bring that passion to their job again. So, and I thought it was important to bring this to. A study by McKinsey found that these top 3 are what motivates people to stay in their jobs. So obviously, support for health and well-being is number 1. Workplace flexibility. I think with the pandemic, all of us, would like our employer to be supportive in case something comes up, in case we have to, go and do something or something happens in our personal lives. We want to know that we're taken care of. And then also the meaningfulness of work. So, really being passionate and loving what you do and seeing, feeling included and really seeing the meaningfulness of your work. And I just want to point out that, this is especially true with our Gen Z generation that is entering the workforce. Not to pick on my team member, but I recently hired a Gen Zer. And I do have to say that, her and I have a lot of conversations about this. And, this peer group is really looking for a place to work where they feel supported, not only professionally, but also, about their mental health, about their physical health, really just their quality of life. They want to know that their employer really supports them and is going to be there for them in, those regards, in addition to just, professionally. So when we're thinking about the next generation of our workers, this is really what we need to bring to the table to attract the top talent and retain them. All right, let's see. Okay. Still have a little bit of time left. So some of the other things that matter most to employees, we talked about this focusing on well-being. We see this a lot, remote and hybrid work. I know some industries this is not possible in, but there are other ways to really, offer your employees, additional perks and support. So the company culture is one of them. People are looking for, pay that really supports them financially in their day-to-day lives, as we've seen, with our economic situation, inflation, things like that. People want to be compensated accordingly. Work-life balance is huge. I think the days of working nonstop are hopefully over because that's not healthy for us. And, I think employees realize that, they want to, have passions and personal lives outside of work and not be required to be at work, overtime every week. And then this flexibility that we talked about. So now getting into the top workplace wellness trends for 2023. This is really what we're what we're seeing employers focus on in their work places to really, retain and attract top talent, to create healthy employees, really create that ideal work environment. We talked about the focus on flexibility. One way to fight burnout is with time off. I think we live in a culture where working, not taking time off is sometimes seen as, you're an overachiever or things like that, which, I think it's important to communicate with your team members, with your employees, and even for yourself. You need to utilize your PTO, your time off, to recharge, to really spend time with family, really be able to kind of step away, have this refreshed mind, come back into the workplace to do your job re-energized. Number 3 is huge. So supporting employees that are also caregivers. So we've seen an increase in this, the sandwich generation that's really taking care, right now of an elderly parent or adult. Really supporting your employees that have these additional duties. They have a lot on their plate, and sometimes, it requires extra arrangements, extra flexibility. And, this also goes with parenting, and especially new parents that are kind of just getting the hang of things, right? So, really offering this extra support or flexibility to your employees that, have these duties. Financial support and education. Obviously, this is huge with, the economic status. People have had financial stress. Really being there for your employees and offering those services is critical. We've talked about prioritizing mental health. Obviously, this topic is not going away. We're all struggling in our own ways, and being there for your employees is what matters right now. And developing that sense of belonging in the workplace. We've talked about this inclusivity, focusing on DE&I, really making sure your workforce is feeling appreciated, is feeling heard, feeling supported in all different aspects. So I have a little bit of time left. Let's see. Now I'm going to go into what we're doing at the Detroit Regional Chamber to essentially help with, workplace wellness challenges and offer resources. So the Detroit Regional Chamber, in partnership with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan, we launched this initiative called Wellness Works. And Wellness Works really is a wellness hub for businesses, regional businesses, to really gather the information that you need to essentially enhance your workplace wellness program, start your workplace wellness program, or really just get new ideas. And, we have many different healthcare and business partners in this, Henry Ford Health System being one of them, and, our community members, our peer chambers of commerce. We're really trying to share this resource because it is complimentary and available to all of you to utilize for your internal goals. So some of the things that we have different articles and blogs related to, these different topics: physical health, mental health, financial wellness, a lot of the things that we talked about today, burnout and stress. So really, these are all there for you to utilize for your own purposes, internally and maybe even personally. We also have these step-by-step employer guides. This is really a good resource for, Joe, I see you creeping up here. You're making me nervous.
You didn't get Shayna's, but
So yeah, these are really great step-by-step guides for you to implement, your own initiative. Here are just some examples: how to retain a healthy workforce, fostering an inclusive workplace, and how to increase your EAP utilization, all great topics. And then also we do these, webinars and in-person events that are also complimentary for all of you to attend around various topics with great guest speakers. So please take advantage of that. And then, we would love to connect with you. So please join our newsletters. The website is wellnessworksdetroit.com. You can find all of this information on there, and if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll be, in the know of all of these upcoming things that we have going on. So I could speak about this forever too, but I guess I'll stop there, and I'll just leave you with my contact information. You have my email. You can connect with me, on LinkedIn. I would love to chat with you, collaborate. Please reach out to me. And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, that was awesome. And I do want to just mention, though, as Cynthiana said, so we are great partners with the Detroit Regional Chamber, just like we are with the Michigan Chamber and the U.S. Chamber. And the information and the resources that she just mentioned are available to all of you because you're a member of our chamber. So that's the connection, how that works. So Cynthiana, thank you very much. Shayna, thank you very much. I want to thank our sponsors for this morning's program.